Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world or wherever you're watching this as a recording. Thank you very much for joining us. I have the pleasure of introducing John Kurowski from Explayo. Hello, John.
Hi there.
John, I'm going to get off this stage in a moment and hand over to you because I know you'll have a thing or two to say as usual, and I'd encourage people to take note. Please, if anybody does have any questions, pop them into the comments box and we'll try to get John to answer those. If we can't answer them during the session, then we'll try to come back to people somehow. And also, just a reminder, because I know that this is something very close to John's heart, having won the best presentation last year, please do go to John's profile on the A4Q Testing Summit Edition 2025 and cast your votes when John gets to the end of his presentation. So, John, I'm going to disappear and leave you to share, I know, a lot of insight and information. So everybody sit back and enjoy. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Debbie. So hi there. Basically this year, last year I looked at DevOps. This year I've moved across into looking at artificial intelligence. And so I have been delivering a lot, as I say, was DevOps. I have been delivering a lot of automation courses, and AI has been edging its way in when we talk about automation, machines doing the work of human beings. And so what's always fascinated me is along the lines of we talk about all of these tools and running everything, and my concern is sustainability as well. How is it actually helping? How are we helping the environment, or are we hindering the environment? So the idea of this as a presentation was to basically talk about how AI and automation and test automation, basically how it helps sustainability and also how it hinders sustainability as well. So I'll probably start with hindering first and then talk about helping. I'll also talk about if there's tools out there that can help us, and the last few slides kind of move around a bit as I kind of think about where things are heading as well. So to begin with, historically there's always been the bottom line. So the idea of the bottom line is it's just profit. So a lot of organizations have just thought in terms of how much money, so in terms of the net income or the profit, how are they doing financially. Excuse me. And over the years, this has kind of moved and changed a bit. So with, actually, I'm just going to draw. I've had loads of time to do the slides. Just see if I can just draw on this one. Mainly because there's loads of triangles in the world. And there is one which is the cost, time, and quality. So in terms of this, we have cost, and we have time, and we have quality. Now, what fascinates me, having done a few of the ITQB courses, is they say, and okay, it looks like a mountain, doesn't look like a triangle, is they talk about, with automation, the main reason for automation is to save money. And that sounds really good if you're a company that's interested in the bottom line. But I did chat to a salesman about 15 odd years ago, and he was going around plugging test automation to different clients. And when he drew the cost, time, quality triangle better than I have just then, he would talk about the different corners, and he was expecting everyone to be interested in the cost, but actually the corner they're interested in was time. It was the fact you could get a lot more testing done in the time it would take to do a manual test. And so he then changed his sales pitch, but he thought it was basically in terms of they'd be interested in cost. The other thing as well, from a sustainability point of view, is sustainability has reared its head over the last 5 to 15 years, and companies do need to consider being sustainable. Now, if they're just looking at the bottom line, I think there's a few things lately I've seen where they would do things that are sustainable if it helps save them money. So if it's a sweet manufacturer where the sweets are wrapped in foil, they could wrap them in paper and then say they're recyclable. They're thinking of the environment, but it does actually save them money as well. So in terms of the bottom line, I think there's a lot with sustainability where it's the low hanging fruit. We can say we're sustainable, but it also helps us to save money. But what they do need to consider is basically the triple bottom line. This is where sustainability is coming in. It's not just profit. So in terms of profit, it's not just the finance. You have to think in terms of things like, and the profit side, job creation, generate what economic value that the company's generating and the long-term financial stability. There's also the people and the profit to consider as well. So in terms of people factors, it's the fact that it's a fair business, fair business practices, beneficial to the workers. They're considering the community, and it's the employees' well-being, and their human rights and diversity and equality as well. Down at the planet side is the usual things when we talk about the environment. So we're talking about how environmentally responsible will the company be in terms of things like resource usage, waste management, carbon footprint, water usage. It's the overall ecological impact. So companies now need to start thinking this way, mainly because average consumers are thinking this way as well. Sustainability is something that's very much on a lot of people's hearts, and so they are looking that way. So we also have to consider things from an AI and an automation point of view, certainly from testing, in terms of considering things, doing testing sustainably. Got a couple of slides just for some facts, just to not exactly scare the life out of you, but to kind of put a bit of scale on this. It's very hard to find stats that you can actually sort of follow and pick up, because one website says one thing, others another one. I did find a website, they were talking about if you had a simple, non-complex suite of automation tests, how much power would it consume if you run those? And it was around about 0.5 to about 2 kilowatt hours per hour. And just to give that some sort of, I compared it with human beings. A human being in a day would use about 2 to 3 kilowatt hours per day. So roughly the time it takes a set of execution tests to run for an hour is about the same as a human being for a day. And I have had many animated conversations over this, because I did have a lady where she took all the testing that would normally take her a day. She then automated it and it took 20 minutes. And so I talk about a balancing act. There is a balancing act with this. Automation is so much faster than human beings, so we can get so much done, but we do still need to consider in terms of the amount of energy, but I will talk about that later on. Next slide is talking about training AI. So these were stats for ChatGPT-3, where this is how much resource it needed to train that AI model. So electricity, the first website I found said hundreds of megawatt hours, so hundreds of thousands of kilowatt hours. But I think it's something like 1,200 megawatt hours, something like that. I think I read somewhere. In terms of water, it needed about 700,000 litres of water just to keep these servers calm, keep them cool. The other thing as well is in terms of CO2, it's used about 550 tonnes of CO2, which is about the equivalent of about 125 passenger cars being driven for a year. In terms of human beings, I've talked about electricity, 2 to 3 kilowatt hours per day. Water, we use anything from 90 to about 180 litres a day. And in terms of CO2, the global average is 4 tonnes of CO2 per person per year. Now, that is the global average. In Europe, it's something like 6 to 8 tonnes. In America, it's about 16 tonnes. China, it's about 9. And if you look at the climate goals, for limiting global warming, I'm trying not to talk about climate change, but experts are suggesting we need to get our global figure down to less than 2 tonnes per year. So we have a challenge as well. But yeah, this was training ChatGPT-3. Of course, 4.5 has come along since then. Can't find any figures on that one. But in terms of queries, ChatGPT query uses about 0.0029 kilowatt hours of energy, 68 grams of CO2. Now, I've been working on these slides for months, and so Google has been slightly annoying because they've changed their logo lately, so it's now a lot more blurred. The other thing too is this was a Google search before it used AI, so as you can see, 0.2 grams of CO2. Google now, whenever you do anything in Google, it includes the AI element as well. And so it is incredibly hard to switch off AI and get Google just to do Google searches. But it will also be using a lot more resource and a lot more energy because it now also includes AI as well. Whoops. Let me go back. I know I've gone the wrong way. Apologies. I need to go that way. Sorry about that. I've used my mouse and my mouse moves everything everywhere. Okay. Did find a report from Bain & Company, and they were looking at the carbon footprint of a typical consumer goods company. And yeah, they were saying basically by 2030, they are expecting typical IT carbon footprint to be 3 times bigger than it was 2 years ago. So there is things like there will be, data storage, the cloud services, they will get not naturally bigger anyway as the years progress. But it's also the fact that there's a lot to do with generative AI and a lot of cloud services around this as well. So that is going to be getting considerably bigger. I haven't done much on data servers. I've only got a half hour, but yeah, it's about 3 times bigger. So just on to the last negative one, which is the negative impact of AI and automation. So looking at the people, planet and profit again, in terms of looking at the people, job displacement is automation, AI and automation can lead to a lot of job losses. There's a film on YouTube called something like Humans Need Not Apply. And I think that was predicting about 47% of jobs can be replaced by AI and machines. And so this is going to lead to a lot of increased instability with increased unemployment rates. In terms of wages, there's going to be a disparity because the traditional jobs will disappear. So we then have to start looking at transitioning into the more high-tech, high-paying positions, and that will also generate a skills gap. So there's a lot of workers. I mean, I meet quite a few people that don't even have smartphones these days, and so we're looking at people who are having to make the transition, like into these new roles from their old roles. In terms of the planet, we've got environmental impact. So using AI and automation does use up a lot of resource. AI specifically can be substantial, the amount of energy it uses. So in terms of resource depletion, not only is there things like water being used, but there is also the rare earth metals as well. Because we're looking at creating new technology, creating new chips and things, we're going to be using up those resources too. And in terms of profit, yeah, the middle one, if we are heavily reliant on AI and automation, you then get to a point where companies can make themselves more vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks. And that will result in financial losses. There's one happening to a business at the moment. I don't want to name them or anything. But in terms of the top bit, economic inequality, when you've got the big businesses, they can afford all of the new technology. They can afford all the latest cutting edge AI, all the latest automation. So they can very easily outcompete with the smaller firms, which is the bottom bullet point. If you're a smaller firm, you're going to have to spend a lot more money on the tech, a lot more on the AI, just the upfront costs of getting all of this working, which could mean that you're sort of out, it impacts your profitability and getting things going. So there are dangers with more AI and automation. Those are negative slides. To go on to the positive ones, to look at the positive aspect, from a people point of view, it will create a lot more new jobs. There's a lot more jobs going to come into tech and data science fields. So looking in LinkedIn, there's been a few posts I've seen where they list a load of jobs with the word AI in the title. So not only is it training the AI, you need to test the AI. There's always going to be jobs around, that humans need. And also skills development. AI can help with training programs, international tools, educational tools. And in terms of improved working conditions, automation, AI, it can take over the really boring jobs, and it can also do the really dangerous jobs. Looking in Twitter, it's not called Twitter anymore, it's called X, but there was a little film showing some Chinese robots. So there was one of them which was in hotels folding towels, which, let's face it, is a boring job. But the other one was mending electric cables on pylons, which is incredibly dangerous. So what's a good side of this from a people point of view is that the automation and machines and the AI, it can take over the boring jobs, but it can also take over the really hazardous ones as well. In terms of the planet, We can use AI to help with the sustainability. So we have AI tools in there. I think Google used AI to look at their data servers to make them more sustainable. So we can actually use AI to to vet AI, to look at itself and see where it can make improvements, where it can make changes and things. So there are a load of AI driven systems out there that do monitor carbon emissions and look at ways to reduce them. There is also things like gas companies. They have AI that monitors things like methane, and I think methane is something like 20 times worse than carbon, and they will monitor methane emissions and again suggest ways to reduce it. So that then gets you to efficient resource allocation. They can ensure that the more efficient use of resources, switch things off, switch them on, only have them on when we absolutely need them. And from a profit point of view, automation is much faster than a human being. So because it's faster than a human being, it's a lot less time, a lot less money, and so it does reduce cost. It does increase productivity, because if it does the task of a human being so much quicker, it can do that task so many more times, or could do that task and a load of other tasks. And so it does increase productivity. We can get a lot more done. As I said, the lady that automated her day's worth of tests, and it only took 20 minutes. And then there's innovation as well, innovation and growth. Because we have AI, we have tools like automation and things where we can test things very quickly. DevOps encourages innovation. It encourages trying things out, trying new things. If we've got an environment where we can try something out very quickly, see how it's going. If it's not any good, regress it back very quick. Then that's going to help us with innovation and help us with growth as well. With sustainability, other things that companies need to consider is ESG, which is environment, social and governance. It's basically 3 topic areas that companies are expected to report in. So it's not actually, it's capturing all the non-financial risks, and it's giving the company a chance to show all the opportunities as in terms of its day-to-day activities. So in terms of the environment, it's the usual thing: greenhouse gases, water usage. Also, is the company using recycled materials, or is it using brand new ones? Is it recycling water it's using for cooling down and things? And how are those materials being used? Are they being recycled again, or are they going into landfill? So it's looking at the positive sustainability acts, which will impacts, which will help the long-term business advantages. In terms of social, how they manage employees, labour practices, so things like safety, access to sort of all of their products for underprivileged social groups and things. And in terms of governance, it's like legal. It's like, how is the company aligned with its sustainability performance in terms of diversity of the board? It also considers things like anti-competitive practices, corruption, things like that as well. As well as ESG, we also have to consider things like there are sustainability development goals. United Nations member states got together in 2015 and they provided this blueprint. They have it, I'm just reading the quotes, blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. They came up with the 17 Sustainability Development Goals. If you go to the website, you can click on each one of those. It will go down. It will give you all of the targets, all of the goals. How can we actually achieve this? How do we know we have achieved it? Now, in terms of AI and automation, not all of these apply. So we can get it down to maybe 5 of them. So in terms of the 5, we're looking at number 8, decent work and economic growth. Automation enhances productivity and makes the software development process so much more efficient. And so that can lead to economic growth. In terms of number 9, industry innovation and infrastructure. Talked about innovation already. Again, improving the quality, the reliability of the software enables us chances to innovate, develop more robust structures, try new things out. In terms of 12, responsible consumption and production. Again, we're talking about, with automation, optimizing the test scripts, reducing resource usage. So we're then more responsible for the consumption of what we're doing. Climate action, again, responsible, efficient test automation, we can then reduce energy consumption, lower the carbon footprint. And the final one there, partnerships for the goals. If we are collaborative with our knowledge sharing, then what we're doing with automation and all the practices we're doing, we share it with other people so they can then learn from this and adopt the same practices as well. Now, I did have a look around for tools. It's very hard to find tools. The OTAA in brackets at the end is other tools are available. I'm not trying to plug this. It's just the only tool I could find looking around. Microsoft have a tool called Sustainability Manager, and you can put, an organization can put all of its metrics into this tool, and it will report in lots and lots of different ways as to, you can see water usage, emissions, but it's doing it at an organization level so they can then monitor how well they're doing. I was speaking to someone only the other week who was saying that they were at a client where they basically knew everybody, all the employees' addresses. They knew how they traveled into work, be it by car or by train. If they went by car, they knew the makes of cars, and they could, in short, work out all of their sustainability metrics. And what they were then able to do is run it through a few models, and then the models can then suggest ways to improve their sustainability and lower their emissions even further. And it could suggest it on a country by country basis because this was a global organization. So there are tools out there that enable companies and organizations to monitor all of their sustainability metrics. There are also tools that help us from software development and test automation point of view. Explio a while ago did a hackathon where different people came up with different ideas, and one guy came up with the idea of green. Well, he was passionate about green automation, and so they wrote a tool. They called it Greenshaw. It looked at code, and it basically analyzed the code from a sustainability point of view. So this particular code has just got a line where we're doing a garbage collect, and in it, it's talking about the fact that garbage collections are expensive, should not be forced. And as you can see, it gives you a figure, because it's written in Ireland, of about 24 euros to run this per day, and it gave it a score of about 52%. It also mentioned the percentage of a polar bear's habitat that would be destroyed if you ran this for a day, and also the number of trees you would need to offset the emissions. So it actually gave you sort of figures you could relate to as we talk about looking at things from a green point of view. There is also some testing practices we could do that are more green. Early problem detection, starting testing as early as possible, as early in the project, not 8:30 in the morning. Early as possible. The earlier we find the defects, the less time it takes to fix, and time is money, so then we're saving lots of money. The earlier we find a defect, then any time in between when the defect is introduced and when it's found is basically wasted activity, and so it's wasting resource as well. So finding the defects as early as possible is a good thing. Remote and off-peak testing. Do we really need to run all the automation in the middle of the day at the absolute peak time when everybody is using all the resources? Do we not run them out of hours? I know I've been involved in non-functional tests at midnight, in the middle of the night when nobody's using the system. Talk about remote as well. I mean, nowadays we can think globally. So when we're running the tests, are we running things? Are we executing? Are the servers in the right location? Because if you take somewhere like Africa, for instance, I believe electricity would be cheaper because they have the sun, they can have solar panels, they can use reusable energy, but water is way more expensive. And I believe that water is cheaper in Iceland than it is in Australia. So in terms of, there's something I was trying to find out, which is where exactly is ChatGPT trained? Because if it's trained in one place, the resources could be a lot cheaper than if it's trained somewhere else. So in terms of remote testing, it's not only is it sort of what are we testing, it's where are we doing this and when are we doing this. You've also got risk-based testing strategies. So to me, risk is what are we worried about the most? Prioritize everything by risk. You get the most important testing done as early as possible. And so at that point, if we've got to a reasonable level of risk that we're happy with, we could stop testing at this point, and so we're therefore not using any more resources. It kind of gets you into minimizing software waste as well. If we can get it right first time, every time, then we don't need to keep re-releasing and again using more resource that way. We can also monitor post-launch, and we can also, as I say, if we really update the quality assurance and the quality gates, we can make sure that we're reducing the need for rework. So there's a lot of driven developments out there, like test-driven development, behavior-driven development. They're basically, people will hate me for saying it, but they're basically writing the tests before the code or the system arrives. And so the idea there is DevOps talks about building quality in, measuring the quality as early as possible. Net zero as well, ideally we want to get down to net zero. So we can have, as I say, there are tools like the one I just showed you where it can measure your carbon emissions. So you can, by a code by code basis, see how much resource the different automated scripts and the code is using. And we can then come up with strategies. So we could do things like reduce the testing cycle, use more energy efficient hardware, look for renewable energy sources. And then we get to the optimizations. So automation optimization, do we really need to run the regression pack every single night? I was in one place where it was run every single night. So why are we running it every single night? And I don't know about you, I hate the phrase because that's what we always do. And so, but it hasn't changed in about 3 weeks. Nothing's changed. It'll be fine. There are places, do we really keep needing to run all of the automation again every time? So in terms of regression testing is a classic, but do we need to run all of the tests the whole time? In terms of testing resources, we don't want to consume too much resources doing testing. For this particular stage of the testing, do we need an environment as close to live as possible, or can we get away with smaller environments? As I deliver courses, use Amazon Web Services, so I'm very keen to use instances that are using sort of smallest machines. Well, they'll know it now because I'm telling you now, but in terms of looking at machines, they might have started as extra large, they're now down to large. I can get away with some courses moving down to medium, maybe even small. They don't need that much processing power in order to use the environment to do their exercises. And then at the end there, environment optimization. I was at a client site where each tester got their own environment. It's like, do we really need our own environments? So it's optimizing the use of the environments as well. As we're talking about optimizing and going green, I've been in debt. I have to briefly chat about DeepSeek, mainly because I was reading about the fact that they say they were 30 times cheaper than ChatGPT getting trained, training their model. So I had to have a look. So I've put a brief slide in here just to talk about what did they do that reduced resources. So to begin with, they had a mixture of experts architecture. I've got a picture showing a neural network later on. Usually with neural networks, you have a number of parameters. So ChatGPT-3 had about 1.5 billion parameters when it was training its model. I think GPT 4.5's got just under 2 trillion. DeepSeek had 671 billion. But what they did was, when you've got 1.5 billion parameters, they all have to be up and running at the same time when you're training the model. When they used the mixture of experts, what they did, an input token came in, they would then select the appropriate expert to fix that. And they only needed to activate 5% of all the parameters. So it's a much more efficient way of using things. They also did load balancing on the expert. So if one expert was called too much, they added a bias to it. So it would then move to the back and other experts would be picked. They also used lower spec graphic processing units. And so they basically squeezed them for maximum performance. So rather than having the biggest, latest cutting edge tech out there, they use smaller spec hardware. They also, with memory compression, use much more memory efficient training techniques, so they could then reduce the need for expensive storage and bandwidth. And the last thing was, it was all open source, so they could then reduce the development overhead, and then it was modular, and also because it's open source, communities could contribute as well. Looking ahead in terms of future landscape, these are a few figures ChatGPT told me about. So Gartner says that by next year, about 1.8 billion people will be interacting with AI daily. We're going to be creating about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. I think a megabyte is 10 to the power 6. I think a quintillion is 10 to the power 18 It's a lot more. 80% of businesses think AI will reshape in the next 5 years. Got a list of adoptions by industry, but I haven't got time to do them. And at the bottom there, they talk about the fact we could savings with training models and using models if we actually quantize the model. So instead of using 32-bit floating point numbers, we could actually maybe use 16-bit or 8-bit, reduce the precision, and that will make it cheaper as well. OpenAI has got 5 steps to artificial general intelligence. So the minute level 1 is the large language models, which is what we've been using. Level 2 will come along, which is reasoners. That will be kind of human level project problem solving. They say it will be at PhD level, but it's basically at the moment it can't do sort of the general scope of things. Level 3 agents are coming out, but they're not sort of they do the work of human beings, like without any human input, but they are kind of limited. They're not, the AI isn't working it out for itself, but there are agents out there. Level 4 is going to be innovators. It's going to create things by itself, so it's going to actually aid to invention. It's going to add to the human knowledge. And level 5, which sounds scary, which is the AI will do an entire organization's processing for them. They won't need human beings involved. I know I'm a bit behind time, but very quick. Industry 5.0 has come out lately. So Industry 4.0 was where all the robots and the AI and the automation and the big data, everything came out at that point. It was basically a big digital age. Didn't mention sustainability. So Industry 5.0 has come out. So the good thing is it's considering sustainability. So it's one of its 3 pillars. The other pillars is resilience, which is like anti-fragility with DevOps. The idea being is the systems are resilient. They will stay up and be up 24/7. So if there's power cuts, tidal waves, systems should still stay up and be running all that time. But the other key thing with Industry 5.0 is that everything becomes more people-centric. We have humans, we have machines. We're then looking at humans with machines. So the machines and the AI will complement human beings. So you kind of see it with some of the phone apps, things like if you need to book a hotel or get a taxi, you know, the app is around the human, so the human is very much driving the tech. So you could have surgeons doing operations, you know, the machines are doing the operations, but the surgeons can be suggesting them, moving things. Okay, last couple of thoughts. One I had a while ago, now this is ages ago, I talked about neural networks. You've got a number of parameters, which is really, I mean, the circles in this and nodes, the parameters, the lines between the nodes. And as I've been saying, the number of parameters have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so as you do that, then the number of layers become bigger and bigger. So in order to refine the AI so it learns more, we have more and more layers. And what I don't know about, and I've tried looking, I can't find any research on this, is if anyone is reducing number of layers. If you reduce the number of layers, then it's less resource, you know, so it's better from an environmental point of view. And the reason why I sort of think about this is because it's depressing. It was about 40 years ago. I knew someone working in a research lab, and he told me all about neural networks. And at the same time, I was coding, storing stuff using a B+ tree structure. There it goes. And it suddenly struck me, why don't I put the two together? Because B+ tree structures basically was a decision tree where it reduced the number of levels you went down, and he had so many layers across. I don't know if anyone's doing this. Someone must be doing it, looking at the nodes and making the nodes so much more sophisticated. So if they could do a lot more processing at that point, then maybe it'll reduce the number of layers. So the mixture of experts is kind of heading this way. The other thing that struck me too, this is also from the 80s, saw a seminar by Commodore Grace Hopper, and she came up with a great quote, which was, if one ox could not do a job, they didn't try to build a bigger ox, they used 2 oxen. So when we need greater computer power, the answer is not to get a bigger computer, but to build systems of computers and operate in parallel. So it kind of got me thinking with AI, because the AI, the models are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the only way I can describe this is pub quiz team AI. So it's along the lines of, if you were going to a pub quiz, one person will be good at sports, one person will be good at films, one person will be good at music, and you get those people together, so when a question comes in, the appropriate person could answer it. And I'm kind of thinking along the lines of maybe maybe we need to start looking, from a resource point of view, rather than having these big AIs that do everything, we develop lots of smaller AIs that are very specialized and do a particular task or a particular thing. And I've heard about a few companies where they're building their own AIs to do things specifically. And it just gets me back to thinking about Selenium. Other tools are available, but Selenium is very good at what it does. So it's very good at recording against browsers. That is what it does. And you have lots of other tools you can use with it. And I'm just wondering whether AI, we should move down that way. So in terms of, there are people thinking of distributed AI. This is literally last slide. They have servers where they send the information down to the computers at the bottom. And so the computers at the bottom actually do all the processing and send all the instructions up again. There is some AI on mobile phones. And so there is some distributed AI, I think it's called Edge AI, but it sends the details down to the mobile phones. They do the processing for them. And the other picture there is multi-agent systems. It's the same AI sort of cloned. And the only way I can think of this, and they work together. So the only way I can think of this is robot sheepdogs. If you had two sheepdogs getting a group of sheep into a pen, they work together. The two of them work with each other. So it's multi-agent systems. There's lots of small AIs working together rather than one big one. And that's pretty much everything I was going to talk about. Very quickly, just to summarize, AI is getting much quicker. It's getting much faster. And so the challenge is going to be trying to keep up with it. So what I would say is we do need to keep innovating and coming up with fresh ideas, but we also need to consider doing it sustainably. And that is me. So hand back to Debbie. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, John. I think a point very well made about sustainability. And everybody, you heard it here first, Pub Quiz AI.
Pub quiz team AI.
Team AI.
Yeah.
John, let's have a look and see if we've got some questions here.
Okay.
Now, we hear this again, not just testers, most of us. Will AI replace testers?
Oh, it's really tempting to say yes and scare everybody. I don't think it will. Just had an article in the latest SQ mag, which is really good. I won't tell you how it ends or who the murderer is. But quite a few of them, they talk about this as well. And the overall opinion is we always need human, manual testers. I prefer human-driven rather than manual. And when I do automation courses, I do get people pop up in the coffee break going, there will still be a need for manual testers. It's like, yes, you still need a human being. We still need to sort of sanity test things. So there was a project where there was an application generated hundreds of PDFs every hour, and we had an automated test to check all the figures, and that was fine. Then somebody opened one of them, and they should have been landscape, they were portrait, so they looked really terrible, but the automation wasn't testing that. And the AI may not have thought of that as well. Mm-hmm. So sometimes human beings come up with things. The other one as well is there's something known as the alignment problem, which is whether AI is truly aligned with human beings. It's got a much better name, which is Sorcerer's Apprentice Syndrome, which sounds really good. If you ever see Fantasia, Mickey Mouse is a sorcerer's apprentice, and he conjures a spell to get a broomstick to fill up loads of water and wash the floor, but he can't work out how to stop it. And then he tries to chop the broomstick and makes loads of little broomsticks. Problem becomes 100 times worse. And it's kind of whether the AI is aligned with what we really want. And so if it isn't, we still need human beings in there to make sure that, I've got AI to generate tests and things, and the tests, they're kind of okay, but they're not really what I'm exactly after. So getting AI to understand the business objectives, the reason for the project, the why, why are we doing things the way we're doing them, is getting the AI line. So I think we're always going to need human beings. As for automation testers, I'm not too sure about automation because it can generate loads of automated tests. That said, you're probably going to want to generate the automated tests off the code, and that's a really bad idea. So out of the two, maybe automation might be more at threat because AI can generate code a lot quicker, but I still think we need human beings involved to check everything is as we expect it to be.
Thank you. I'm sure people will have some comments to make on that. Let's have a look and see if we've got another question. Okay, how easy will it be to test sustainability?
That's an interesting question because I've kind of talked about it a lot already. but I think it's a case of knowing when we use resources. It's kind of, well, I mean, in terms of testing, we know what we're doing, we know how we're doing it. It's more the where and the when and the why. So as I mentioned already, there was a place where they always ran the automated regression pack every night, which is great in terms of building confidence. It's really good. But do we really need to run it every night? Do we actually need the environment switched on as well? So in terms of from a sustainable point of view, it could very well be that we start shutting down servers. We only bring them up when we absolutely need them. And with risk-based testing, it could look in terms of risk, in terms of is it worth? Well, we already do it, but is it worth running all of the tests for this particular thing, or just a subset of them? You know, and DevOps will be interesting because it has pipelines. So in terms of the version control, someone commits something, it will then wake up all the pipeline for it to go through. But does it turn everything off afterwards? And if another job came along afterwards, would it be turning it off when it's trying to run? I'm digressing. But in terms of will it be easy, I think it's more a case of writing the code more efficiently. And as you can see, there's tools that will look at the code, analyze it to make sure that it is much more sustainable, but also in terms of environments, where we run them, how we run them, do we start them, do we stop them, and things. So I don't think it's going to be that easy. I think it's going to be a bit of a mindset change.
And is the discussion about this happening? Is it something which is on the agenda of organizations to test for sustainability?
It must be. It's got to be in there. If we're looking at the people, profit, and the planet, then we've got to be considering in terms of running things sustainably. Do we really need all of this done all the time? Yeah.
And you mentioned Industry 5.0 earlier, which I know.
Absolutely, and it's in there. It's a key pillar of that too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And let's see if we have another question here. Okay, let's take your crystal ball out, John, please. And where do you see AI heading?
We're going to get lazier, is basically the thing. You see it already. I mean, Queen has a song, I want it all, I want it now. Hard work pays off eventually, laziness pays off now. AI does your jobs for you. So I can see a point where you say, oh, could you generate a 5,000 word document for me? Yes. Email it to someone. They then go, oh, could you summarize these 5,000 words into 100? So the document never gets read. A lot of people at the minute, you can see a lot of things happening where they're using AI and they think they're tricking humans and that. But there are a lot of English teachers that are leaving their jobs because they're fed up with pupils using AI to write their essays. They can tell they're written by AI. And it's also hitting universities because they have to do things like document reviews and literary reviews. They're now realizing that because of AI, they haven't got that acumen. They haven't got those, they haven't sort of built those skills up successfully to be able to do document analysis at a level expected in universities. So because AI can do things for us, it is making us lazy. It kind of reminds me of my dad back in the 70s was a chemical engineer, and all these people had these newfangled things called calculators, and they would go 20 times 30, 6,000, and they would take the value as whatever it said, and you just get the feeling that with AI, it says the following, we'll take it as gospel. But where it's heading, we're going to get lazier. What else can I think of? Yeah, AI is going to get lazier. We've got other stuff coming like emotional AI, which will be able to tell basically, our emotions, pick up things this way. But in terms of, it was just
skill set, John. How about skill set? Because what you're talking about makes me think about what we typically talk about, the soft skills. Whether it's critical thinking or curiosity. Where's that heading?
Yeah, in terms of critical thinking, the trouble with AI is at the moment it's taking everything that we've done already. So it's not thinking of new things. So if somebody's done it already, then AI can amalgamate it into what it does. But in terms of where things are heading, it's not coming up with new ideas. So things like critical thinking, coming up with brand new ways to test things and stuff like that, it will only go by the way everybody else has tested things. And the other thing that annoys me with AI is it's using all the blogs and everything from the web at the moment. And I think the Google searches, they used to be over 90% of searches was Google. I think lately it's gone down below 90 because people are using AI. Now AI has basically scraped all the web pages into its knowledge. So those web pages aren't getting the same number of hits that they used to do. And certainly when I write blogs, people are interested in how many hits a web page gets. If AI has just scraped the page, then those websites aren't getting the hits. People aren't going to keep writing them. So the knowledge that AI is using at the moment isn't going to be there in the future because people aren't going to write it because they don't get the same number of hits.
It was interesting as we need to kind of finish over time, but I was reading this morning about AI and copyright and, you know, where that's going to go, because, you know, is it fair that it is to access all this content? So there's a whole other conversation there.
There's a whole thing on explainable AI. The AI could tell you where it gets everything from. So if AI is making a brand new piece of music, it could tell you the pieces of music it used to make that piece of music. So then those people could get the royalties. So another area is explainable AI. If I was to tell you something, you'd then say, well, how do you justify it? We seem to be just AI tells us something. We go, oh, there we go. It needs to explain how it gets to what it produces as well, because that's what we have to do.
John, I'd happily sit here for another half hour chatting to you, as you well know. Can I just say a huge thank you to John and also to everybody who has tuned in, whether it's the broadcast or a recording. A reminder that we will be having the poll for the best presentation, best speaker at the A4Q Testing Summit Edition 2025 website. So please do go and cast your votes and stay tuned. I know we've got more sessions to come. And finally, a big thank you again to John. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.